I'm very glad you all like the music. That was actually our the wonderful faculty member who's joining us this morning. It was her idea. So, although I'm glad you're having a good time. Um, we'll give students one more minute to trickle in, but just before we get formally started, just wanted to remind everyone about some ground rules that we have as we engage with each other, as well as the faculty member joining us today. Of course, the grounding principle of Crossroads is compassion and mutual respect. So please be compassionate and respectful in the chat as you interact with your peers, as well as members of our team and the faculty member, first and foremost. And we really encourage you to be open-minded and learn things in interdisciplinary ways, and broaden your perspectives, both through your interactions with your peers and the material we'll be learning today. So very excited to introduce our faculty member joining us today. Just give one more minute to students joining in. Tsedal, it seems like this Pharrell Williams was a big among the students, so that's great.
Always makes us happy. Yeah.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. I know a couple more students will be coming in the next couple of minutes, but we are so excited to be joined today by Professor Tsedal Neeley. She is a professor of business administration at Harvard Business School. Her work focuses on how leaders can scale their organizations by developing and implementing global and digital strategies. She regularly advises top leaders who are embarking on virtual work and large-scale change that involves global expansion, digital transformation, and becoming more agile. And I know, based on what I've heard many of you say, learning about remote leadership is of course what you're all here to do. So Tsedal seems like such a wonderful fit for our program. Her book, Remote Work Revolution, Succeeding from Anywhere, provides remote workers like yourselves and leaders with the best practices necessary to perform at the highest levels in their organizations. So I'm very excited to hand it over to her. Tsedal, please take it away, and we will keep the chat open. And if Tsedal has questions, she will be calling on you. So raise your hand if she poses a question to all of you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. It's terrific to be with you today. And it is my first Crossroads experience. So I am just so honored and privileged to be able to join this extraordinary program that I've been a huge fan of since my colleagues co-founded it some time ago. I also want to acknowledge the fact that we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. Some of us quite personally affected. I lost an uncle, the young uncle, at the end of December 30th. It was a shock to the family, but the pandemic is touching us in many ways. So I just want to say and acknowledge that my thoughts, my hearts, my prayers continues to be with everyone as we get through this. But I also am so glad that we get this time to spend together remotely nonetheless. The topic that I'm going to pursue today is remote work. And in fact, interestingly enough, this book, Remote Work Revolution, was released at the end of March. And it's a book that I've been working on for some time before the pandemic hit. And the reason for this is I was convinced convinced some 20 years ago that virtual work, remote work, and kind of this access to broad audiences was going to be part of the future of work. Of course, I would have never imagined that it would happen in the way that it did. But what COVID has done is it kind of accelerated the virtualization of education, the virtualization of work, the virtualization of ecosystems and industries. And even now, in some countries, we're thinking about the return to work, and there's a lot that people are talking about. Maybe this is relevant to you, this idea that can we maintain flexibility in our workforces? And what would that look like? Where some people are coming into the office some of the times, can we inject what we've learned over the last 14 months or so into the future of work? So I want to share a number of things with you that will be relevant whether you end up in a hybrid situation or remain in a remote situation. But the idea that people are going to continue to use digital tools to communicate, even if they're in the same location, is truly what I think is going to be part of our reality moving forward. So I want to share with you the two most studied areas when it comes to distributed work, meaning that people are not in the same location, are productivity and trust. And as you see in the middle there, you always have to think about digital tools because you are relying on digital tools in order to communicate with one another. Let me ask you a question. This is a question for all of you, and you can chat in your answer. In the last year, would you say that your productivity has gone up, A, stayed the same, B, or gone down, D? What's it been like for you? I see some up, up. I see down, down, lots of ups, lots of sames, and the fluctuation, absolutely, very, very real. And some it's stayed the same. It's really interesting. If you look at the data on this, productivity typically goes up with remote work. Remote work actually increases productivity. The reason for this, why? Well, let me ask you this. I'll tell you what the data are on this, but why do you think productivity goes up with remote work? Raise your hand. I'd love to hear what you think the answer to that is. Why does productivity go up? Why does productivity go up? Let me see some hands. Ahmed. I see you're off camera. You can stay off camera.
Yes, how are you? Good morning.
I'm great. Where are you, Ahmed?
Lebanon, Beirut.
Lebanon, Beirut, magnificent. So why does productivity go up with remote work?
I think the fact that because we don't have to get up and go to work and use the transportation system, that's why.
So you have more time to work. There's
yes,
no
exactly.
There's no preparation. So that's one hypothesis. Others, Yasmin, why does productivity go up in your mind?
Hi.
I
think that I can manage my time. I can do multitasking while working from a distance. So I felt it's very useful.
But you can manage your time when you're in the office too, or at school. Why is it different when you're remote or virtual or working from home?
Sometimes I need to do many things from home, like teach my brothers, for example, do house chores. I can do many things that I need to do in my house. From remote work.
That's called flex time or flexibility. You can
yeah.
some things that is related to your life and then return to work without the commute and the stressors. Gabriel, I have a son named Gabriel, so I have to call on you. I have a son named Daniel too, so if there's a Daniel, you're going to get called on to. Gabriel.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's just keep talking. I think we can make out what you're saying.
Okay. I'm gonna try to say it. So I think it's more comfortable at home. And can you hear me? I can't see
you're
you.
you're more comfortable at home.
Yeah. I feel more comfortable at home, and I can use the I forgot the word. Oh, 1 second.
So this comfort at home, why does that increase your productivity? Why don't you just make yourself more comfortable at work? Like, what is it about that?
Yeah, for example, I can put the clothes I want to, I can be on the place I want to. So I think it's more comfortable at home than work on a social place and work with other people. Maybe this concentrate me.
That's really great. One more, maybe we can hear from one more person. Let's see. Is it Ikra? Can you hear me? IQRA, is it Ikra?
Good evening.
Yes. Why does productivity go up? Any other thoughts for us?
Exactly, as we sometimes even we are working outside, but we also need to work at the home, and there's a lot of facts because of which we have to stay at home, and it increase the pressure of our work, and it also relieve the burden of our work just because of that we can work at home, and it make us relax, and it also provide us a lot of opportunities. And due to some situations like in COVID, we can't go out, but we can use these products even in the home.
Thank you. So it sounds as though there's something about the environment. I'm going to clear hands. There's something about the environment. There's something about being comfortable, managing your own time, not spending time commuting that makes a difference here. So let me tell you what the research has found to augment some of these observations. The reason productivity goes up is because people are they love to be autonomous, meaning self-directing their own schedule, their own work, or what's also called psychological self-control. People love the flex time that you mentioned, to be able to segment the day in ways that make sense for them, still being quite productive. People don't like the commute, it turns out. And for many people, they say that they actually save money from not going to work. It costs money to go to work, to buy coffee if you're a tea drinker, to park your car, or to take public transportation. There are expenses related to that as well. The very first company that experimented and measured productivity was Cisco, with remote work in 1993. And what they found was 90% of their employees worked remotely or had some kind of hybrid work, and they started seeing increase in productivity, and they're saying, whoa, we knew that people wanted this, but we didn't expect this level of productivity to go up. And they were able to track this productivity to job satisfaction. People were just happier. And when people have job satisfaction, they typically perform better. Sun Microsystems, now acquired by Oracle, started this experiment in 1997, where 60% of their employees participated in remote work. And not only did they start seeing productivity, people wanted to retain the remote flexible into their professional arrangements. And listen to this, over 10 years, they saved $500 million in real estate because they didn't need as much real estate. So you're thinking to yourself, these are just US companies. Is this just a US thing? Well, think of C-Trip. China's largest travel agency, had about 250 people participate in either work from home or work in the office. And they looked at this for 9 months, and they found that productivity went up for the people who were working from home, 13% increase in their productivity, and 50% drop in turnover or people leaving. And so you see this in outside of the US as well. And finally, government work. The United States Patent Office. Do you know what a patent is? Where people create novel things, and to protect that intellectual property, they submit patents. So great. So what they found was their patent officers, 831 of them were given the opportunity to work from not just home, but anywhere. There's a difference between working from home and working from anywhere, meaning you can work from a cafe, you can work from another city. They saw almost a 5% increase in output from their people, which again, this is a government, this is not a profit-based organization. And they found that the higher autonomy their patent officers were granted, the more productive they were. And the other thing that we find is that people who are even more happier than those who can work from home tend to be those who can work from anywhere. So this idea of just this flexible freedom makes a difference. Now, I see your hand, Yasmin. Can you chat in your question or your comment? Because I want to cover a little bit more ground here. Is that okay? Wonderful. Some of you said your productivity didn't go up. In fact, it went down. Or some of you said it stayed the same. And some of you said, well, it was actually dynamic. It went from this to that. So there are conditions for productivity to be met. One is your literally physical space where you're working, or working conditions have to be conducive for work. So if you have a small space, you're kind of in a corner of a bedroom, uncomfortable all the time, worried about noise, or being in an intergenerational home where you have, your grandmother walking behind you in the middle of a class or Zoom call, people get anxious about that. The other thing is, if there's a lot of noise, it turns out children and pets can actually create an environment that doesn't quite work. If you don't feel connection with your team or the people that you're working with, that reduces your productivity and sometimes increases what's called professional isolation, which makes working from home miserable. My team is miserable. I feel all alone. I don't see anyone. It's just not working out. So there are some conditions that have to be really rectified for productivity to go up. Now, another question that I hear all the time, I'd like to pose it to you first. How can you trust people you barely see? Some relationships are new, some relationships are existing, but if you don't see people, how do you maintain trust? What do you think of that question? How do you trust people you barely see? And why has trust been one of the second most studied topic in remote work? Raise your hand if you have any thoughts about this. I'd love to hear your, and remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. We're just trying to figure out some answers here to the question. Jasmine Nayak, hi.
Hello, ma'am. I think trust is built by something called eye contact. If we cannot see them in the eyes, we cannot trust a person. So, and through Zoom video and all, I don't think we can fake ourselves. I don't think it is same as meeting someone. we can, in virtual world, it is very easy to fake. We have cyber crimes for that.
If
So
you can't really see someone, can you really read them? Sonika.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Nice to meet you, ma'am. I think trust can be built by seeing their potential, like how they work. It is the basic thing. And by taking the interviews, like when we go for doing any job, firstly we are asked to do the interviews. And what I think the last thing can be built on seeing the LinkedIn profiles, like we are asked to enhance our LinkedIn profile. It is a part of trust that we can do in case if it is virtual. Otherwise, if we are spending time with someone, then it depends then how they behave and all kind of these things.
Wow. You are actually spot on. And in fact, I'd love to introduce you to the idea of the trusting curve. It directly relates to the points that you just made. I'm clearing hands just to make sure we spend time on this. So what is the trusting curve and how does this work? And how does this relate to Sonika's, did I pronounce your name correctly? I hope I did. Sonika, am I right? Is that okay? Give me a thumbs up if I pronounced it correctly. I don't see a thumbs up. Oh no. Oh yeah, I see a yes in the chat. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So there are a number of insights that she shared with us, and I want to put it in the context of a framework that I hope will be helpful to you. The trusting curve is similar to the learning curve. We've all heard of the learning curve, right? Over time with learning, we can move up the learning curve of a subject that we've been trying to learn, right? This is something that we've all had to live with since we were little children. The trusting curve is very similar. On one axis, you have time. On another axis, you have trust. And there are two types of trust that are important to understand in kind of a remote environment. The first one is called cognitive swift trust. The cognitive swift trust is something, if you can see in this graph, you can almost confer it to others at time zero, very early. But you need to know two things in order to do that. The first one is this person reliable? And that's knowable, right? We can figure out very quickly, we can ask others, we can observe ourselves, if someone is reliable. Is this person dependable? That's the first thing that you need to discern. The second thing that you need to figure out, LinkedIn is connected to this, is this person competent? Does this person have the qualification that we need? So if you need a particular type of engineer on your team, it could be a student team, it could be a professional team, you can easily know if they have that background. So once you figure out that they're qualified and dependable, just give them trust, swift trust. It's the most liberating thing in my mind that researchers discovered about trust in a virtual or hybrid environment. Because you don't have to worry about, oh, what do they think of me? What do they think of them? What are their morals? What are their values? You're not worried about all of that. You just need to know those two things and let's get to work. The data on this is also as robust as can be. We find that with swift trust, collaborators can be incredibly successful and effective in a remote environment. But that's not enough. You also want to make sure over time, especially if you have a leadership role, you need to have what's called emotional trust. Emotional trust. And emotional trust is grounded in the belief that people care about you, that the people care about your difficulties, people care about your interests, people care about your concerns. It's really a heart-to-heart type thing. Leaders must earn emotional trust of their people. Yeah, people have to feel safe with leaders. Emotional trust, if you look at this trusting curve, takes longer to achieve, but it can grow as well. How do you gain emotional trust? Sometimes I call it mature activities that you need to engage in. You get emotional trust through mature self-disclosure or sharing of yourself. Okay, meaning sharing, opening up, telling people a little bit about yourself. And what are you telling people? About your interests, about the things you care about, your aspirations, concerns you may have, who you are, how you are. And why do I use the word mature? You never want to do or say things that could be offensive to people, that could be damaging in a relationship. So you want to be cautious about the things that you share so that people are comfortable with you. And the other way in which you earn emotional trust is through empathy, or putting yourself in the shoes of others. But you're not just putting yourself in the shoes of others, you're reflecting it through your actions, through your words. How do you show people that you get them? You show it by talking about the things that you get, asking questions. If someone is struggling, ensuring that you do things to support them. So this is how trust works in this context. It's quite gainable. It's quite doable. Does this make sense to you? Put in the chat or give me an electronic thumbs up or physical thumbs up if this makes sense to you. Are you with me? I love that, Marcella. You totally get it. I love it. I love it. I see all the thumbs. I see the notes. Fabulous. If you remember this, you will have a much better time when it comes to remote work, remote collaboration, remote leadership. I want to talk about digital tools next. Digital tools are all the ways in which we interact and communicate when it comes to distributed work, collaboration, etc. Here I'm talking about email and Zoom, we're on right now, all of those things. But first I want to ask you a quick question. How many of you have heard of the term Zoom exhaustion, Zoom fatigue, tech exhaustion, or how many of you have experienced this tech exhaustion thing that we hear about? Is this a small problem? Is it a big problem? How many of you, raise your hand if you've ever experienced this Zoom fatigue or tech exhaustion that we've heard about at times? Few hands going up. What is it exactly? Can someone explain to us what it is? Your hands are up. So do I assume if your hands are up, I can just call on you? Nathan, you've been trying to get in. What is Zoom fatigue? What is this tech exhaustion thing?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello, hello. What is
Good
this?
morning.
Good morning.
I guess this fatigue comes from the gadgets, from the blue light. It is like our eyes turning to with a kind of sand, and we get anxious or maybe just tired.
At the end of the day, you're like, oh, I'm so exhausted. I'm so exhausted.
Yes.
I'm gonna clear hands, and if you want to add to this Zoom fatigue, tech exhaustion, raise your hand so that we understand it better. Let's see, Marcella, what would you like to add here?
I was actually reading about this some time ago, and I read something that I really identify The fact that we saw our image all day in a Zoom call, and that is something that doesn't happen on the normal world. I think something really exhausts us because we are seeing ourselves all the time and we are worried about the movements we are doing on camera. In a normal meeting, if we do a movement, the attention will not be called for us, but in a Zoom call, because we see ourselves, I think this is an issue, and this is really exhausting.
Yes, and another way to say this, I'm going to move on because I want to give you a few things to ensure that you don't experience this ever again. Once I go through the next few slides, you will not have Zoom fatigue anymore. And that's my hope, actually, if you follow these practices. Part of what you're describing is I'm clearing hands, actually, to make sure that I can move forward on this. If you have some things that you want to share, please type them right into the chat. I'm following with you as well. The reason people experience this is because of the cognitive load, it's called. We are working so hard, the energy that we have to use in order to communicate is exhausting. But that's not the only reason. It's also exhausting because we actually over-index on using video when in fact we can use other things. Let me share some things with you around the 5 things that we're trying to figure out when it comes to communication and getting on the same page, getting aligned. And from there, I'll talk about how you can mix it up to reduce the pressures and the cognitive loads that we're speaking and to be much more effective. There are 5 conundrums or 5 things that we're trying to achieve through digital tools. One is called the mutual knowledge problem. When it comes to dispersed life or when we're in a distributed environment, this is the problem of being out of sight, out of sync, out of touch, and out of alignment. And interestingly enough, let me ask you this question. You can chat in your reaction to this. Say you spend time putting together an amazing email. So important. You spend time writing it and you send it off and you expect to hear back in about, I don't know, 5 hours, and you don't hear back. Okay, 8 hours, nothing. 24 hours, nothing. What do you start thinking? So, Wajahat, did they get my email? You start stressing. What else do you be? Are they annoyed with me? Are they mad at me? Is this not important? Are they ignoring me? What's going on? Did I say something inappropriate or wrong? Something must be wrong. You see how your brain just like goes crazy? Here's the thing. You're not alone. We're living in a world today that when you're in the same time zone, people know that we kind of walk around with our phones like this. We've seen that email, and people kind of psychologically expect to hear back from important emails that they send. But like Wajahat mentioned earlier, most of the time, it could just be that they didn't see the email, lost in an inbox, or it jumped into the spam folder. I'll tell you, when I've emailed myself from my Gmail account to my work account, it's landed in spam before. So those things do happen. But this mutual knowledge problem, because we don't share the same context, we can immediately begin to attribute or misattribute what could be going on here. This is a common problem, not being on the same page. The other thing is called social presence. This is how do we make sure that we feel intimacy with people that we are communicating with? And how do we make sure that if something is urgent, people kind of get it and they don't kind of miss the context that we're interested in? Social presence is one of the first and early pieces of work that's come out of this research stream. And this is a complete guessing game. We're going to do a guessing game. Put in the chat what year you think this article was written on social presence. You're not allowed to Google it though. You're supposed to just guess. Just throw in a number. Social presence research. What year was it first written? 2014, 2013, 2018, 1990, 2000. The answer is, are you ready? 1976. 1976. Why is that important? Because all this work on remote, hybrid, distributed work, people think that, oh my gosh, this is new. How are we going to ever survive this? It's not new. People have been looking at this phenomenon for almost 50 years, and that should give all of us confidence. Now, the next thing that's important to understand when it comes to digital tools is what's called rich versus lean media. And you can think of this as a continuum. Lean media includes things like Google Docs or email, things that don't convey emotions, context, place, right? Does that make sense? Rich media includes video and face-to-face, where you can, as we heard earlier, see people's cues and expressions. And it's not that some lean is bad, rich is good. It's what do we need for the task at hand. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they think you need rich all the time. Actually, sometimes rich is the wrong thing to do. Synchronous versus asynchronous, meaning right now we're live, synchronous, same time, versus asynchronous. That's another important dimension. Finally, there are geographical and cultural differences in terms of what people want and in terms of how to communicate with people. So this is really important when we're in a global environment. It's not just what we love. Oh, I love Zoom. No, you've got to figure out what your audience wants, right? Would they prefer an email? Those are the types of questions you need to ask. So I have another set of things that I want to share. Then I'm going to give you a little quiz. There are 5 additional things to understand when we choose media. One is the delivery of speed. If we need something fast, what do we choose from a digital tool standpoint? Trying to convene a meeting is not the answer if you need fast. Is it one recipient or is it one to many? That will determine what we use as well. Do we need to make sure that a variety of expressions are conveyed? So very bad news, very good news, all of those things require something that people can see you, for example. Fine-tune potential means, do we need to work on this together? Is this an iterative document that we need to work on together? And if you need that, then you have to choose your tools appropriately. Finally, message permanence. Do we need to capture, store, and reuse this message or this tool? Very important, this work, very important to figure out. So let me ask you a question. This is quiz time. If you had information that you wanted to share that requires processing complex information, okay, you get me when I say complex? It's not straightforward, it's nuanced, there's a lot to take in. What do you use? What type of media? Do you use synchronous and rich? Synchronous meaning live and rich meaning video or in person? Do you use synchronous and lean? That's B. I want you to type this into the chat, please. And I'd love for you to send it to everyone. Do you use rich and asynchronous or lean and asynchronous? So A, B, C, D, or you can write out synchronous and rich. I see AC, lean, and synchronous. Okay, okay, keep going. I'm gonna give folks another 5 seconds. Okay, are we ready? I think 2 people got the right answer so far. I think 2 people have got the answer so far. I see, Rebecca, your eyes popped up. I can see it. You're like only 2. Here's the answer. D. 3 people now. D. Why? You want people to sit with that information. So asynchronous means you send it to them so they can look at it. And lean means email. It could even mean something like Slack, something that says at channel, here's the document. You want people to sit with it. So why do people get Zoom fatigue? They get Zoom fatigue because with this type of complex information, the first thing they would try to do is call a Zoom meeting. When in fact, you want to send this ahead of time so people can read it, think about it, and be more effective. And in fact, in my book, Remote Work Revolution, we actually map out evidence-based what activities require what type of communication. And remember, this work has been going on since 1976. So we're very clear about how to increase performance and mix up the use of technologies. The other thing that I think is exhausting people is the edge-to-edge meetings without the transition time and, doing better with our to-do lists. So I want to talk about one more thing related to digital and digital tools. And this is understanding that when we're working remotely and in other places, some things can happen around security. So we can be innocently living our lives. Imagine you're sitting, you're working, you get an email, innocuous email. You click the link, nothing happens, life goes on. Before long, strange things happens to the computers at the workplace. Data gets lost, machines are shutting down, and thousands destroyed without making any sense. And next thing you know, you're pulling out cords from the back of machines to try to figure out what is happening. This is what happened to Saudi Aramco when an innocent looking email showed up and someone clicked on it. Next thing you know, all of this attacks to their system. The results, 10% of the world's oil was at risk. Can you imagine 10% of the world's oil at risk just because of a phishing email? So we need to be very intelligent and thoughtful about what emails come to us, what's suspicious, what's not. In the last 14 months, companies have reported so many more cyber breaches or attacks in their systems because people are dialing in from home, or when they set up all of these different digital tools, it's not integrated well within the entire organization or the system. Bad actors can do bad things. Saudi Aramco has been very strict about this, by the way. They've trained their people to identify these phishing emails, things that look odd and weird, that don't look like they're coming from your organization. These fake folks who say IT from HBS and, kind of trying to lure you to click on an email. In some of these companies, they train people. And if people make mistakes, they'll actually fire them. So we really need to be thoughtful about this, especially when we're in a remote environment. But that's not where I want to leave you. I don't want you to leave here thinking, oh my goodness, it's all bad. It's not. It's not. There are questions around how do you identify these emails. Some of you who may know the answer, please type those in, because I want to leave you with this final slide that talks about success factors in a group. Success factors in a group, or the 60-30-10 rule. 60% of successes in a remote virtual group is all about who is in the team. Team design. Do we have the right people in the group? Right level of diversity of thought, meaning background? Is it the right mix of roles, skills, all of those things? Who is in the group? 60%, big deal, right? 30% is all about how we launch our team. Having an explicit conversation. How are we going to work together? What's going to make us successful? How should we communicate? Do you prefer email, or should we think about different things? How do we remain connected personally and professionally? Explicitly having these conversations. What constraints do you have? These are my constraints. How do you think you're going to contribute to our group? This is how I think I can contribute to our group. This is 30% in terms of success rates, right? Think about this: 60, composition design; 30, how we launch and relaunch ourselves regularly; and 10% covers the time that we're spending together to work together. Think about it. The collaboration that we do together accounts only 10% of our success as a group. The implication of this, therefore, is what? When you see 60-30-10, what's the implication? What's the so what for you? Raise your hand or chat in what you think is the answer. Yes, Dorianne.
Good afternoon, madam. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, can you get me?
I can totally get you. So why is that the 60-30-10 rule important, and what does this say to you?
In fact, I think that the 60-30 and 10% are important in a group. The 10% working together is, in fact, the percentage is less, because the most important thing is not for us being physically together, but what each and every one of us can bring intellectually to the growth of the project towards which we are working.
Great.
That's
Great.
my viewpoint.
That's the so what for you. Great. Eliel, Eliel.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, so I think the 60% really shows that in a team, all the team members have to have some knowledge of the material, so that when they now finally collaborate, then they can actually have better quality of work. So it really requires that each individual in a team have a lot of knowledge upon the subject they're working on.
So that's the implication for you, because you're saying having the skills, having the backgrounds, therefore, is important here. Great, great. Javaria, is it Javaria? Take your time.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so this 60-30-10 rule is, I think, this makes the whole 100% of the success. And if we follow this 60-30 and 10 rule, it will guide us for our leadership abilities, like knowing your team, communicating with them, and knowing what they want from you. That makes this whole 100% success factor.
And so which part would you invest in the most then?
I would say 60% because this will make it more efficient.
It's interesting because that was a trick question. Thank you, by the way. That was a trick question because you're right in that when you understand where the 100% comes from, you need to make sure that you've got the right people in the group, right? The composition really matters. And then once the group is together, then you work really hard to ensure that you can work together quite well. So, it's interesting, Jonas says, we can't control 60% much. That's a great observation, which means that sometimes we inherit teams. One thing that we can do potentially in that situation, I don't know if it's Jonas or Jonas, is that you can make sure that people can gain skills, you can coach and help people develop the types of input that you're interested in, but you can absolutely control the 30% and make sure that you're constantly aligned there. Very, very good point. That 10% is dependent on the 60-30, right? The right people with the right norms working together. So in the short time that we have left, let me ask you, what's on your mind? I'm going to clear hands first to make sure that we've cleared the deck. What questions come up for you? What are you thinking about, worried about, when you're thinking about remote work, leadership, or any other questions that you might have? Anees, A-N-E-E-S. Hopefully I said that correctly.
Hi, ma'am. Yes, I use.
Hello.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am, I was thinking about that. What is the effect of the privacy and the security concerns that we have in this remote and the digital world, or the new normal that we have, and how is that related to our productivity and then when we work from home, and how is that affecting us, and how can we make sure that our productivity is not does not go down due to our concerns and the things that we have just you also discussed about that there are many cyber attacks that our data is being leaked and we are constantly under threat. So how is that related to our productivity, and what can we do? What are the key steps that we can keep in our mind, or we can take on our own, so that our it's not affected for us?
Yes. So I wouldn't tie productivity with privacy and cyber or security concerns. But what I would say, though, is it's incredibly important that we educate ourselves. We understand what does it mean to inadvertently, meaning just very innocently, make our data vulnerable or our pipes vulnerable, or sometimes our organizations might have some security measures and we're like, oh, here we go again. I wish I could just avoid this verification process, and we might just say, oh, let me go this other way to get this information. Those things make us vulnerable. Sometimes if it's, we have certain channels that our organization has set up for security reasons, we should respect those. The other thing is we're actually living in the world where individual managers or individuals download a lot of software. So like, oh, I want to try this. This looks like an amazing dictation tool. I'm making this up, but just as an example, we're constantly downloading and adding new things that may not be protected under our organization security system. So we really need to be quite aware. And I actually would recommend reading a lot on the topic. Read some tech magazines. Your mind will explode when you see the number of issues that arose just in the last year because of some innocent action that someone took. So educating ourselves. Aldo.
Mute myself from here. Yeah, it's been quite interesting that I've listened to the discussion all along. But there's one thing that touched me when you were talking about the issues to do with mindset and of course the Zoom fatigue, something like that. And I look at also the trend in which we are right now. Like the pandemic brought us into the Zoom, and Zoom looked like something very new.
Yeah.
The mindset, I'm not quite surprised to see that in one big ministerial meeting, a minister went to the toilet with the Zoom cameras on, and it tells us that for sure, it's something, the mindset is not there. The generational gap has created a lot of things.
Yeah.
And infrastructure in which we live.
What's your question, Aldo? We don't have a lot of time, so I want to make sure.
My question is the infrastructure and also the remote work we're talking about. So it's kind of very hard for developing countries like Africa, those mostly in Africa. The infrastructure is not there, the 5G, but even 4G is still a technical problem. So how best can the developing world tag and be in line with those who are able to go into remote work? That's just my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, infrastructure is actually a very important question, not just in Africa, but in other places. Because if your access to these technologies and broadband is so important, is diminished, it makes it very difficult. Remember when I had the productivity question, A, B, and C? Infrastructure can be quite limiting. And in many places, if companies, private organizations are not able to help individuals, people are saying, I want to go back to work because the infrastructure here is just not great yet. So this is an important point to consider. And I think it's going to shape whether people will maintain this long-term or not. I did a talk recently in India, virtually, where a lot of people in India want to also maintain some kind of flexibility in their schedules, but the infrastructure question would be one of the inhibiting factors. So you raise an important point, Aldo, that it's one of those things that can either help people or actually get in the way, unfortunately, when it comes to hybrid. So with the interest of time, I will take maybe one last quick question and then we'll go to close. Fizra, hi.
Hello, Milan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so my question was that at least for me, I have gotten used to the remote world, and it has proven to boost my confidence because of less interaction, less human interaction. But now that we are going back to the physical world, because my university is going to start soon. So how can we make the transition easy from going from the remote world to the physical world?
Wow, what a great question. You know, it's interesting because remember, before this remote work experience that we've all had to participate in, you were in person, you were interacting with people and connecting with people. But you know what my guess is? My guess is that people are going to still use Zooms. I mean, imagine if you have small meetings, you can still use these different tools if they're available to you to have your meetings with your student teams, things like that. So I think it's going to be a mix of digital tools enabled engagement, even if we share the same space and it's safe, as well as the in-person. The transition is not going to be easy. And I say this from experience because people are just gotten used to not having the commute. People are used to a different way of engaging. But I think what I think is going to happen is what we've all experienced doesn't subtract from what we know. It adds to what we know. So the question is, how can you continue to engage with others, whether it's online or offline, in person or not, and use everything that you know to be effective as an individual, a group member, and a leader. I think this is all additive in the end. So I want to thank you so much for this time and this session together. I appreciate it. I wish you all health and happiness and all the things that you aspire for. And I appreciate this terrific spirited conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you can spell my name, you can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter. That's the hardest thing. Tsedal, very easy to find. So I appreciate this time that we've had together. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Tiara, it's all you.
Thank you so much, Tsedal. What an incredible session. I know I have been mesmerized taking notes, mutual knowledge, like very incredible. Thank you so much to all the students for joining in all the different time zones. For those of you who have joined very late in your evening, thank you for staying so engaged and bringing so much warmth to this conversation. And again, please give a huge round of applause to Tsedal for this amazing session. I hope as future leaders who are all connecting remotely, this was an incredible session for all of you.